In today's episode, a church congregation famous for provoking deadly rattlesnakes as a test of their connection with God. With just 2 fatal snake bites in 20 years, the church has no plans on stopping anytime soon. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the Deadly Snake Handling Church run by Jamie Coots. Welcome to Final Affliction. Jamie Coots was a controversial character to say the least. By 2012, his outrageous church services had even been showcased on the National Geographic Channel. Coots liked to bring live snakes on stage, his favorite being the rattlesnakes and vipers. The more venomous, the better. He and his congregation believed that his 20 years of handling the snakes, while being bitten no less than 8 times, was proof of God's divine intervention. It was evidence that true believers could always count on God for protection from even the most dangerous creatures and circumstances. But Coots was, well, a kook, and it's hard to have much sympathy for a man who put his own congregation in danger. It would have been one thing if he'd taken all the risk upon himself, but Coots allowed his church members to handle the snakes themselves, telling them that faith would keep them safe. It worked out pretty well for Coots for a while. That's until 28-year-old Melinda Brown died after being bitten by a 1.2-meter-long rattlesnake in 1995. Melinda was taken to Coots' home, where she suffered for 2 days before she died from the bite, and no one called for help until it was too late. Preaching about love and bravery is one thing, but if you're going to go out of your way to test your God, no matter who you're praying to, you're poking the bear. Putting innocent people in the line of fire is absolutely unacceptable. He never bothered to get licensed to carry or keep the reptiles, since no authoritative body would have ever allowed anyone to handle venomous snakes on a stage and with such close contact with the general public. He had a pretty long rap sheet because authorities kept catching him with tanks full of unregistered snakes in his car. It's a little mind-boggling why he was allowed to get away with it for so long, despite operating so openly. Somehow, Coots continued to operate his charlatan church for another 19 years before disaster struck again. But this time, it was Coots himself who suffered the consequences. In the middle of a Saturday morning service, Coots was holding a handful of rattlesnakes when he dropped them onto the stage. This wasn't an accident. He often went out of his way to aggravate the serpents, to show just how far he could take things without fear. Coots picked them up again, and that's when one of the understandably angry snakes bit him. Since he'd been bitten before and never had any adverse reactions, no one blinked an eye. According to another preacher, Cody Wynn, Coots stepped off the stage just a few minutes later to go to the bathroom. But he returned after a few moments and continued the service as if nothing had happened. Now, you might be wondering how Coots could have survived 8 previous bites before. Well, this isn't actually all that uncommon. Snake charmers in India get bitten all the time by the deadly cobras that they handle. The reason is quite simple. It's not possible to tame or train reptiles, but they are perfectly aware that the human that owns them keeps them fed, comfortable, and warm. So even though they don't feel any affection toward them, they don't exactly see them as a threat. The snakes intentionally don't excrete venom when they sink their fangs into their handlers, using the bites only as a warning that they're getting annoyed, never intending to actually kill the people who handle them. But it doesn't take much to push the naturally feral creatures over the edge. Even something as simple as a temperature change is enough to get them aggressive enough to exact the full potential of their venom into the people foolish enough to parade them around like show dogs. Coots was doing everything possible to get the snakes as angry as he could, so the only miracle here is that it took more than 20 years before he got on the wrong side of a rattler who wasn't going to stand the TV star's antics anymore. The other preachers and band members expressed their concern, because Coots was already becoming pale and perspiring profusely before he left. It was quite obvious that the man was in the beginning stages of a severe reaction. They even called 911, but Coots told them that he was just going to go home and lie on his couch and pray like he always did. By the time the paramedics arrived, Coots was already gone. He'd simply gotten into his car and drove himself home before they got there. The paramedics did their due diligence and contacted Coots at his residence. Over the phone, he refused medical treatment and told them that he was doing fine. But the professionals noticed that Coots' speech was slurred and that he sounded faint, so they got into the ambulance and tracked down his address. But it was too late. They found Coots on his couch, unresponsive. They performed CPR and desperately searched for any vital signs as they rushed him to a hospital. But Jamie Coots had finally gone too far. He was dead a little over an hour after the snake had bitten him on the back of the hand. And if you're thinking that the madness would finally end, well, not quite. The church is still very much alive, and they have more snakes on stage than ever, as well as the one that killed Coots. The pastors, including Coots' own son, Cody, took up the reins. But there's at least some good news here. The new generation of preachers are more than willing to seek medical help when they get bitten. And there's sure no shortage of snake bites at the church. You can count on at least a dozen trips to the emergency room every year. They don't allow anyone but themselves to handle the serpents anymore. They've stated that they take full responsibility for their snakes, and that they also take the safety of their congregation to heart, just like any good shepherd would. But some say that despite these new safety precautions, it's only a matter of time before more people like Jamie Coots and Melinda Brown meet their terrifying final affliction.